Good morning. Say, do you get a lot of goose steppers in your comment section? I know I do. Would you like to pour the sugar of facts, reason, and history into their gas tanks? Hi, I'm Tiger Ball. I lift things, I drink coffee, and I know things. And I can be a little bit petty. Care to join me? After my last video, I got a lot of questions about the Atlantis tie to the Aryans. And that's where you hit them. Fish jokes, Aquaman humor. Give them the old seafood slapstick. They're dog whistles and symbols. We see them nearly every day. Many of them don't understand the history behind it. And how goofy it is. They want to use the symbol and reputation of the Third Reich to be this big scary thing. I say let's sand the edges off it. Whether it's the very familiar statuary of Arno Breker from the Third Reich, the Black Sun, Totenkopf, Sigruns, or lightning bolts. Well, that tells you have an Atlantean on your hand. Don't get it twisted. There is no intersectionality between Norse paganism and the Third Reich. What they did was they attempted to justify their invasions by connecting it to ancestral homelands. See, Germany is one of many of the Germanic tribes, a nomenclature. There was over 30 of them, and they spread all over Europe and abroad, and perpetuated it even further. So they tied their national identity to Odin. They appropriated many of the symbols, creating some of their own, modifying others. But it was lacking that certain historical je ne sais quoi that would give them the connection they needed. So they said that the Vikings were from Atlantis, because Greek philosophers and opera from Wagner. I don't know, there's many theories on why they did it that way. But they jumped headfirst off the diving board into the empty pool of pseudoscience and pseudo-history. Heck, it even inspired a trope in pop culture. The bad guy being from World War II Germany in some way, shape, or form, looking for wonder weapons abroad to take over the world or whatever. Be happy to cover some of these things if you all want, but I digress. Whether they were fully committed in the past or are ignorant in the present, the Aryans believed they were from Atlantis. That's what made them the master race, superior, justifying all the various invasions that they did. Then didn't. Now I can hear some of you now, you don't believe me. Or it was just propaganda. No, they went over the top with it. Let's go on a tour of the University of Atlantis.
Bremen, in northern Germany, stands an extraordinary building. Completed in 1931, Haus Atlantis was designed as an institute for the study of Atlantis and the Aryan super race. The building's facade was originally adorned by a large wooden sculpture depicting the Nordic god Odin crucified on the Tree of Life. Inside Haus Atlantis, an astonishing stairwell, built of glass and steel. It may evoke the Aryan exodus from Atlantis. At the top, the visitor enters a mysterious room. Known as the Heavens Hall, this was to be the teaching forum for the twisted ideologies of Hermann Wirth.
Hermann Wirth was quite fascinated by the idea of finding Atlantis. His idea was that this Atlantis was not somewhere in the Mediterranean or something like that, but in the North Atlantic region. And in his idea, in Atlantis, 20 to 25,000 years ago, a Nordic race was created that was to control and influence the development of mankind to a strong.
Wow! So goofy! The Third Reich would travel the world trying to find it, trying to find anything that could connect it to something else that would keep them going down this rabbit hole infinitely. They never did find it. It would create a QAnon-like legacy that lives on to this day.
Plus, Broly, we have another thing in common. I think you should take more pride in the blood in your veins.
Most of these groups want to lash on to the hate, but they cherry pick and ignore these things. So make sure you give them some tartar sauce when you cram it down their throat. They thought the Aryans were blonde hair, blue eyed, when many weren't. It was just that they bathed a lot, and there's a high lye content in their soap, lightening their hair. They thought the Norse had horns on their helmets like the Minnesota Vikings. That's courtesy of Wagner and his operas. We have a costume department to thank for that. The Third Reich created a whole system on how to judge a person based on how superior they were. You might see it on this app. I'm referencing the blue eyes that say 810 next to them, or old World War II scale on eye color. They measured heads and facial features. They did this while looking for Shangri-La, Hyperborea. Well, let's just say the defense spending was on fiction. Yes, fiction justified their action. They could cloak their goals behind the justification. Goals that still persist to this day, as evidenced by this app. A way to take normal logic and reason and turn it into an us versus them narrative. This is what happens when industrialists or robber barons put a loon in charge. And he brings all of his loony friends, and they each get so much power that he can't contradict them. Even when it's Atlantis. There's not one shred of evidence that connects Norse paganism, anyone of Nordic ancestry, or European ancestry for that matter, to Atlantis. It's one giant joke that they're the punchline of. So get your hush puppies ready, because if you see one of those symbols, think of it as the catch of the day. Fun fact, fish jokes get around the algorithm. Just saying. Take that shark and turn it into a cuttlefish. The more you know.